Hello again, welcome to another Matilda talk. Today's talk is entitled If You See Sid. Now, folk who are old enough to remember the 1986 campaign that the British government ran will remember that tagline, if you see Sid, tell him. Yeah, if you see Sid, tell him about the wonderful investment you can take up to buy shares in British Gas. We're all going to make a packet of money by speculating on stocks and shares. Maybe it starts with British Gas shares, maybe you move on to something else, who knows. Of course, it isn't always a very good way to make money, and everyone that does invest in shares will tell you this. You can lose money. Lots of it. But the share issue is a minor part of this. The whole point of the process was to take British Gas, which was in public ownership at the time, and the responsibility of the government, really, take that out of the public sector and put it into the private sector, where it could be split up into multiple parts and market forces could take over and deliver maybe lower energy prices to the end consumer. Fine concept. But unfortunately, that whole concept rests on the notion that the price of a barrel of oil, for example, the price of producing the energy, is a fixed thing, which it's not. It varies quite a bit. If the costs go up in the country where the oil comes from, for example, then the cost of a barrel of oil goes up, and that cost has to be passed on to someone, i.e. the end user eventually. And for this reason, we've seen exponential rises in the cost of gas and electricity over the past, well, ever since 1986, frankly, and caps have only gone so far to protect the vulnerable, if you're on a limited income, a fixed income, like the elderly, the infirm are, you can't just go out and get a job and earn more money to cover. You can't cope with a couple of £100 price rise in your utilities, so you're stuck deciding between food and heating. Stark choice. So over the coming months, I aim to be doing videos to help us all to show what I've been doing within the household, what my family's been doing to save money. Hopefully you can learn a few things. Pass it on, I say. Now, I was part of the gas industry at one point. One of my first jobs was working as a temp. So just after British Gas was sold off into the private sector, the British Gas that remained, well, the British Gas that I worked with, was the part that dealt with the Joe Public, basically, the consumers, the residential consumers, and it dealt with the billing side of things. The idea was that the gas was delivered to the houses, and then based on the readings from the gas meters, everyone would be billed the appropriate amount based on their usage. Simple concept. There was a separate part of British Gas that dealt with a big industry that uses slightly more, and they have different sort of meters to deal with that. But the same concept still applies. So I was part of that whole billing system. When British Gas was sold off, it made a lot of people very angry because we took what was a publicly owned system where the staff members had, for the most part, very secure jobs with good benefits. Took them, made them all redundant, or for the most part, a lot of them redundant, and forced them to work for less if they wanted to continue within the industry. A lot of jobs, like the one I took on, were taken from people who were really well paid and passed on to temp agencies who then took their cut, of course, and had people working for peanuts. And that's where I came in. So for the first couple of years of my career, I was working for British Gas via a temp agency, two of them in fact, and I'll come back to that a little later. So they took us on to do a clear up. I've always been what you might call data cleansing. And data cleansing covers many things, and sometimes it's just taking a database and pulling out the errors, and other times it's completely rebuilding the database, and that's what I was doing with British Gas. When they privatised the industry, apparently a lot of the managers who controlled the database that was existing at the time, i.e. names and addresses, customer names particularly, and the meters that they related to, well, they decided to bury a lot of those records. So what we eventually had was a list of meters, known addresses, but no idea who was at those addresses. So they took myself and a bunch of other people, a lot of other people on, and we went through the database and compared it with other databases, council tax databases, to rebuild the missing information. It took a very long time. And power to the teams that actually did that. Power to the teams that caused the work in the first place. Power to you for pushing back. That little push may not have gained you a single thing, not a single penny, but I hope you got a lot of satisfaction out of it if you're still around. I sure did. It paid for my first car. The fact was, privatisation was not cost-free. It cost British Gas, I'm sure, an absolute king's ransom to get things back on track. And it continued to cost them a lot of money. And to this day, trying to work it on a shoestring will cost a lot of money. So they had us working with a temp agency back in the day. It was a small Solihull-based temp agency, and it wasn't the worst wage. Just put it like that. It wasn't minimum wage at the time, although we didn't have a minimum wage. It was pretty much a livable wage per hour, given my circumstances. But had I been working to pay a mortgage, it might have been a different matter. I was lucky to be living with my parents at the time. After a while, about 2 years in, British Gas turned around and decided they were no longer going to negotiate with the temp agency that they'd taken on. So everyone who was with that temp agency got passed over to a new temp agency, a cheaper temp agency. And we were all to work for less money. And also fill in all the forms again and reapply for our jobs. So a real feeling of insecurity there. Thanks, guys. And as a result, I got up one morning and thought, you know what? No, I don't want to work for the cheaper agency. I didn't want to take £1 cut an hour, which may not sound like much, but it really adds up. £1 an hour cut over a 37-hour week. That's before the taxman gets a hold of your money. So one morning on the new agency, I just, you know what? I'm of no obligation. I didn't go in again. I wouldn't have found a better job. But to this day, that company continues to employ temps. Businesses that do this do so to take away responsibility for the staff. They devolve responsibility to the temp agencies, pay premium, and as a result, they get a less dedicated member of staff. Because I can guarantee you, if I'm working for an agency on a pittance of pay and the agency's taking a cut, I know about it. So for every £5 I might earn, that agency is taking £10 or better, or they take a finder's fee. They're always taking a cut, and that cut comes from somewhere, and it's staff wages. But of course, the businesses that have a temp, they all think, well, this is worth it. Anyway, rant over. Thanks for listening. Have a good day.